Good evening, this is Maestro Critello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today we have a 1v1 on Outer Reaches. Our first player right here is Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor, playing as this Eldar Farseer, a support hero who fights in melee, focuses on buffing her troops while debuffing enemy troops, also does have some offensive and disabling abilities. His opponent is whitehead1981, playing as this Grey Knight Bro Captain, a tanky melee hero with an enormous force sword. The Bro Captain cannot be suppressed or knocked down. He is very tanky, very powerful, very good. So, Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor is a guy who I played with once as a teammate. He has a very interesting name. I don't entirely know what it means. Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor. I wonder if, butt armor is just referring to rear armor on a tank or something. But I don't know why it's saying that the Power Fist ignores butt armor, since rear armor is supposed to be a point of vulnerability anyway. You take more damage from rear armor. And apparently the Power Fist ignores that. And of course, there's definitely a lot of discussed not so great imagery that I get out of seeing Power Fist and butt all close together. And I try not to think of it too much, and I think that's actually as much as I'm going to talk about this guy's name. At any rate, Whitehead gets out 2 Inquisitorial Stormtrooper squads, and together they pincer that Dire Avenger squad. They do force it off, but I think the Dire Avengers will actually get out of there without taking a mono loss, which is certainly good for them. Now, Whitehead did decide to get 2 Stormtrooper squads out. Those Stormtroopers, supposedly, they actually have pretty high damage. I don't know that myself. I haven't checked the stats. But it is just giving Whitehead a total of 3 ranged units that he can use for focus fire against this Farseer, as well as these Howling Banshees. Right now, those Howling Banshees chasing down that Bro Captain in retreat, but I think he will get out of there just fine. Now, I think the Howling Banshees in that engagement were buffed by the Farseer. She is low on energy. I think she used Guide, her starting ability, to buff the damage of these Howling Banshees. Guide is just the starting ability on the Farseer, buffs damage, also range, particularly good against Banshees, since they already do a buttload of damage. We're gonna go with butts again because this guy has butt in his name. Just does a buttload of damage. Right here, since Power Fist ignores butt armor, won that engagement. He did get to destroy that power node, and he's, let's see, over here. He is doing nothing with those Dire Avengers. All right, so Whitehead is trying to do a little bit of a counter Jan bash. He actually puts an incinerator, an early incinerator on his strike squad. You usually don't expect to see weapon upgrades on the strike squads. If anything, I would expect to see the melee upgrade. And usually the weapon upgrades, for incinerators, you're more likely to just see a purgation. And then as far as psi cannons, you're more likely to just see a purgation upgraded to psi cannons. Now, I don't play Grey Knights that much. I don't really like them that much. One of the things I've been told, though, is that they do actually have trouble with melee. Right now, there's not actually that much that can stop these Howling Banshees from... Basically, there's not actually that much that can stop these Howling Banshees once they get into melee, and Whitehead is mostly just going to be banking on doing enough damage to the Howling Banshees so that by the time they get in, they're already nearly dead. Looks like Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor is now using these Dire Avengers to bash this power node. I was recently observing a Learn to Play session with Codex, and one of the things he was saying is that you shouldn't just put a node down just because you can. And as it is, Whitehead has lost 250 requisition. Those costs are sunk from losing power nodes. He lost this node right over here, as well as this one. And that's 250 requisition that he lost without achieving a whole lot, or without getting a whole lot out of it. Now, Whitehead actually puts grenade launchers on his Inquisitorial Stormtrooper squads that will give him a bit of an answer to the Guardian weapon team. Will also do just pretty good damage to any units that it hits with its area of effect. And he can actually use the grenade launcher ability as a counter to the Howling Banshees, but it will be very much a skill shot. Howling Banshees right there are getting knocked down by those grenades. I think they were about to eat up that strike squad. They did get a knockdown on the strike squad. This strike squad, they do have those big halberds. They can do special attacks. They are decent in melee as well as ranged. So Power Fist ignores butt armor, is slightly ahead of it in tech. He can go to tier 2 pretty soon. He has had a power farm up without losing any of them, although Whitehead is now putting down a lot more generators. He actually decides to put up farm on this contested power farm. Now, Power Fist ignores butt armor, can definitely take that out pretty easily if he wants. Right now, I think he just doesn't know, though, that there are power generators up there. And Whitehead tries to go in with his Incinerator Strike Squad, but they do get forced off by this Guardian Weapon Team. So, like I said, Howling Banshees, obviously one of the most feared melee units in this game, especially out of Tier 1 and even in Tier 2. And Whitehead still not really with a whole lot in terms of countering those Howling Banshees. Now, the Brother Captain does have that We Are the Hammer ability, but that doesn't actually cause any knockback by itself. It's not like Battle Cry, where it causes the Force Commander to do special attacks with every strike. The Brother Captain doesn't really work that way. He can't actually do knockback on command unless you have the Nemesis Demon Hammer. So right now, by himself, putting him in against the Howling Banshees will actually be too risky, because that could actually mean losing the Bro Captain entirely, especially since the Bro Captain is so slow that he will get absolutely murdered on retreat by those Howling Banshees. The Strike Squad cannot really take the Banshees. Well, they can't quite take the Banshees in melee. So I'd say right now Whitehead is mainly going to be relying on micro to deal with those Banshees, as well as skill shots from his grenade launcher stormtroopers. These Dire Avengers definitely overextended. Yeah, they ran in to try to go for a grenade. Actually hit some stormtroopers when it looked like it wasn't going to, and did kill 2 of them, but still definitely not a great engagement for Power Fist ignores butt armor. And now the Banshees are going to get off a little bit of a Gen Bash. I actually think Power Fist ignores butt armor should stop capturing with his Guardian Weapon Team. Actually, he will get the cap off, and then he quickly as he can, he needs to set up that Guardian Weapon Team, and then actually, I was going to say he should lure those units into range of his Guardian Weapon Team with his Banshees as well as his Farseer. But he's choosing not to do that. Instead, he aggressively sent his Banshees into that fight, and certainly they were going to individually they would win on any of these against any of these units. But there were just a lot of units, and eventually they were going to start taking damage. Shuriken Team does set up. I think it just barely suppresses that Strike Squad. The Strikes are actually trying to walk out of range of the Suppression Team, which is the smart thing to do, especially considering how much health these Strike Squads still have, although not so much anymore. Now with this Farseer getting that special attack. And now we do see a Grey Knight Dreadnought from Whitehead. So the Grey Knight Dreadnought, that's almost... It's definitely the most common War Gear upgrade you see from... War Gear. It's definitely the most common Tier 2 unit purchase you see from Grey Knights. Purifiers have been pretty rare these days, and then the Grey Knight Librarian has always been very, very rare. And part of that is just with this Grey Knight Dreadnought honestly being, first of all, as tough as it is, being a vehicle, and then getting a vehicle is generally going to do a little bit more to add more dimensions to your play than getting some kind of other Tier 2 unit. Because then you're carrying the threat of a vehicle against your opponent. Your opponent needs to get some kind of anti-vehicle, basically some kind of AV to deal with that. And wow, that Grey Knight Dreadnought wipes the Banshees. I wasn't expecting that, but it has an Inferno Cannon. What is this? I've never seen an Inferno Cannon. So this Grey Knight Dreadnought apparently still has a lot of untapped potential. It starts out with a Melta, and these days most people keep the Melta. The Melta is really good. It's AV. It's ranged AV. And it's also very good against infantry as well, since it does a huge amount of damage in a single shot. Basically, that's what we call burst damage. It will actually gib a lot. Certain units, it will just gib in one hit straight up. But we actually see the Inferno Cannon, the Flamer. This is possibly the first time I've ever seen that Flamer on the Grey Knight Dreadnought. After the Melta, usually you see the Plasma Cannon. And that usually does some pretty nasty things too, especially to Imperial Guard. But we just saw that Flamer, this heavy Flamer on the Dreadnought, wipe a Howling Banshee squad. So it's apparently pretty powerful. I've never seen anybody get it. And it just blew my mind right there. So this Bro Captain does now have the Nemesis Force Halberd. If the Banshees were still around, now the Bro Captain can definitely counter would be able to counter the Howling Banshees. Just because he would be doing too much damage to the Howling Banshees. He still has to worry a little bit. But he actually just, whoa, and a big attack from the Wraith Guard. From the Wraith Lord, wipes one of those Inquisitorial Stormtrooper squads. I think that was like one sword hit, took out like 4 of them, and then that last one died right after. So now this Inquisitorial Stormtrooper squad does have a Sergeant. That Sergeant on the Stormtroopers are a lot more... that Sergeant on the Stormtrooper is a lot tankier than the individual members, because those individual Stormtroopers only have 100 health per model. The Sergeant has 250. And of course, that Sergeant is also a Detector. Not that Whitehead actually needs a Detector, and Whitehead is already going to Tier 3. And he is burning down generators, so that certainly is going to be one of the advantages of this Flamer Grey Knight Dreadnought. Certainly one of the obvious ones, but I did not realize just how good it was also going to be against infantry. Wiping a Howling Banshee squad. That Howling Banshee squad was derping a bit in retreat, but nevertheless. So, I also missed it, but Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor apparently lost his Bright Lance weapon team. I'm going to assume he lost it because the Grey Knight Bro Captain just ran up to the Bright Lance weapon team and just started attacking it, and Power Fist just didn't retreat it fast enough. So Power Fist, for some additional AV, he put a shoulder-mounted Bright Lance on the Wraith Lord. This Bright Lance does not do as much damage as the Bright Lance weapon team. But it is still ranged AV. Now the interesting thing about the Wraith Lord is that when he has the Bright Lance, he does not really approach when he has the Bright Lance. That is, he just fires while standing still, and he won't close for melee while shooting the Bright Lance. He'll just shoot from range, which is one of the reasons why the Bright Lance is not frequently seen on the Wraith Lord, because ultimately the Wraith Lord wants to get into melee. The range damage is generally a bit more of a bonus. Generally. You generally want it in melee, and it's generally a bit more of a bonus. There is definitely also a way to use the Wraith Lord with the shoulder-mounted Shuriken Cannon. Just doing that range damage on a vehicle platform with 1200 health. But the Wraith Sword will do more AV damage than the Bright Lance, so it will do more AV damage if it gets into melee than it will do in range with the Bright Lance. The issue is that sometimes the Wraith Lord may not always be able to get into melee range. So this Grey Knight Dreadnought actually at level 2, so it has a little bit of a health buff at 1430 health now. Both of these players having surprisingly few units, and Whitehead magically somehow now with a massive tech advantage. I have no idea where that tech advantage came from. I can only assume it came from, I guess, the secondary power farm, because right now he lost his entire natural power farm. He only has 3 units. He lost a Stormtrooper squad, I know, and he's throwing down a Land Raider Crusader already. Power Fist ignores butt armor, is not even in tier 3. Does not even have many units. It's not going to have a whole lot to do with this Land Raider Crusader. So the Land Raider Crusader now drops after about a 10-second delay. So certainly now some very powerful vehicles out on the field from Whitehead. Power Fist ignores butt armor, needs to do something. Now, I mean, when you have to deal with a Land Raider Crusader, one of the best answers, or basically whenever you have to deal with any vehicle super unit as Eldar, one of the best answers is an Eldritch Storm. But Power Fist ignores butt armor, cannot rely on that yet. He's not in tier 3, and it's probably better for him to stay in tier 2, get out some AV to deal with this Land Raider Crusader. As it is, he's getting out a Wraithguard squad. I actually think that's a very good idea. First of all, Wraithguard do a huge amount of damage. One of the weaknesses, or at least one of the abilities of the Wraithguard, I believe Wraithguard actually do not get suppressed. And then one of the strengths of the Land Raider Crusader is that it actually suppresses with all those Hurricane Bolters. So the Wraithguard should be able to just straight up take shots at that Land Raider Crusader without having to worry about getting suppressed. Obviously, one of the other things that is one of the disadvantages, of course, of the Wraithguard is that they often tend to miss moving targets and small moving targets. But the Land Raider Crusader is a slow, massive target. So the Wraithguard are actually going to hit the Land Raider Crusader. We can reasonably expect them to hit the Land Raider Crusader. And there are actually 2 Wraithguard. So I think that's a pretty good answer. And I think he should actually not waste the surprise of the Wraithguard. Well, never mind. He can actually threaten to take out that Grey Knight Dreadnought by using those Wraithguard. And that actually could be a dead Grey Knight Dreadnought. No, the Grey Knight Dreadnought will get out of there. These Dire Avengers just standing in the fire of that Prometheum strike. 2 models die. Wow. Just kidding. All the models died except for the Dire Avenger Exarch. It looked like only 2 models were going to die when those other 3 just straight up fell over. So, unfortunately, this is not a good idea. Having the Howling Banshees try to... not the Howling Banshees, the Dark Reapers try to fight that Land Raider Crusader. They will just take massive losses very quickly. Instead, it looks like Power Fist ignores butt armor is really trying to go for this Grey Knight Dreadnought. Now, the Grey Knight Dreadnought was the easier target there. Just, it has less health, so it was just a little easier to get it to just kill it. Although the Land Raider Crusader is going to be a lot easier to hit. So those Wraithguard, with their heavy infantry armor as well as those big health pools, will actually be able to stand against that Hurricane Bolter fire for a little while. And then with the Land Raider Crusader taking hits from those Wraithguard, it will actually start losing that health pretty quickly. Now, Wraithguard actually do melta damage. That might actually be kind of surprising considering their attack looks a lot like the D-Cannon attacks, but the D-Cannon does plasma damage, which is different. Melta damage, it does actually have a slight penalty to vehicles. It only does 0.75 of the base DPS to vehicles, so whatever the DPS is, you multiply that by 0.75. But, I mean, that's still considering that most weapon types or most damage types do almost nothing to vehicles. Heavy melee, even though heavy melee is considered anti-vehicle, it actually only does half damage to vehicles. Most of the weapons that do full damage to vehicles are things like, I mean, obviously, things like Devastator, las cannons, bright lances, tank cannons, things like explosive and armor-piercing damage. Now, those usually do full damage to vehicles, but they often have fairly low base DPS values. So the Wraithlord actually do not get too many the Wraithguard actually do not get too many shots off against that Land Raider Crusader. They do have their Warlock leader, or at least one of them did, and one of them lost the Warlock leader. That Warlock leader will make the Wraithguard a bit faster, but in that case, one of the Wraith Guard actually got stunned because its its Warlock leader died, and then it wasn't doing anything against the Land Raider Crusader.
We are losing a victory objective. Easy targets. Support structure complete.
So again, Dark Reapers should stay away from the Land Raider Crusader. Like, the Wraith Guard should walk forward. The Dark Reapers should actually just walk around, either down here or even go in this back path to do something else entirely. To back cap, to go after other Grey Knight units. Right now, wow, a lot of Stormtroopers just died from those Wraith Guard shots. Now the Wraith Guard, again, they actually are doing fantastic damage against that Land Raider Crusader. Tank a lot of the damage. That I feel like that was an unnecessary retreat. At most, maybe he should have retreated one of them. I mean, his Wraith Guard, his Wraith Lord, getting a lot of confusion between Wraith Lord and Wraith Guard, and needs to watch out for the friendly fire on his Wraith Guard, nearly killing his Wraith Lord. But I feel like he should have kept his Wraith Guard in play, with knowing that his Wraith Lord was there to deal with the Grey Knight Bro Captain. The Bro Captain, with power melee damage, really isn't going to be that effective against the Wraith Lord. He's only going to be doing very, very light AV at best. These Paladins now with heavy melee are chasing down that Wraith Lord, but they're actually taking bonus damage from the Melta weapons on those Wraith Guard. But now, I think that might be a dead Wraith Lord. And there goes that Wraith Lord. So those Paladins, Terminators they're basically like Assault Terminators, just heavy melee damage. But now we actually have probably going to be a dead Land Raider Crusader, just a few more hits, and Whitehead loses his Land Raider Crusader. I almost feel like that was somewhat unnecessary to lose his Land Raider Crusader. He kept it in play for so long, even at low health, and he was really moving it forward. I don't know if he was trying to end the game right then and there. One of the things that Whitehead needs to do, though, is he needs to at least cap his node right here. And he does have some requisition where he can put up new power nodes as well as new power generators. He does have this power farm over here that Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor has not really destroyed, in part because he's been pinned in his base for a while. But Whitehead should at least capture the point. You don't use any resources. You don't lose any of the resources just by capturing the point. And he's had the advantage for most of the past like 5 minutes or so. The Strike Squad. This Strike Squad has a Psy Cannon. I'm not sure how. I don't know if that wasn't his original Strike Squad, because we did originally see the Flamer, or if Strike Squad are the new Tactical Marines, then they can actually just re-outfit their stuff. Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor, now going to get a 2-cap after spending so much time pinned in his base. Whitehead now going for Grey Knight Terminators after just getting the Paladins. Those Grey Knight Terminators, if they can get in on the Wraith Guard, they actually will be doing massive damage with all that power melee splash damage. That will actually definitely screw over the Wraith Guard a bit. Now the Wraith Guard, though, are getting quite a bit of a gen bash off. I think they will get off this entire farm. And that means that Whitehead is not going to have... He's just not going to have any farm whatsoever. Whitehead does now have the Immortal ability on his Bro Captain with that Holy Armor of Titan. So he took no damage from that grenade or from the shots from the Dire Avengers. And he's still got plenty of health to spare in case they try to start shooting him again. Additionally, he does have that Teleporter pack. He can just go where he wants to be. Teleport in against the Wraith Guard, instantly start doing power melee splash damage against them, which is just going to be very powerful. This Wraith Guard this Farseer rather, is biting off a lot more than she can chew. does have the gravity blade as well as the rune armor and the spirit stones. I feel like I haven't been seeing a whole lot out of the Farseer though. Power melee splash damage definitely going to be devastating to those Wraithguard. And Power Fist ignores butt armor, now floating massively again. I mean, he could get an avatar. He's got the pop, he's got the resources. He needs to do something with it. Not only he could get one avatar, or he could get multiple of a different kind of unit. Eldritch Storm on the Paladins. Unfortunately, that was not a good choice for an Eldritch Storm. And I mean, Power Fist ignores butt armor is floating a ton of resources. Or he was also was floating a ton of red as well. Might lose some of his units right now. Could be a dead Wraithguard. Could be a dead Dark Reapers. Yeah, Dark Reapers did in fact go down in that engagement. We now have an Autarch, a fairly late game Autarch. I see what Power Fist ignores butt armor was going for with that Autarch. He's actually seems to be his plan is to use it for map control, or at least that's what it seems to me. Farseer right here is using the gravity blade to just levitate these strike squads, which is very interesting, I suppose. It doesn't actually do that much. I mean, it just stuns them over there. That in particular was not really a great use of it. For gravity blade, you want to do that in an engagement where you're taking a major you're just taking a unit out of play. And it's more valuable to use that on units like Grey Knight Terminators or Paladins. Just using it on a strike squad when it's only the Farseer and the strike squad is not really going to be that good of a use of the gravity. So Power Fist ignores it, butt armor is now getting that avatar out. Now that avatar, I am a little concerned for that avatar. This is a better use of the gravity blade. He is getting one of those paladins in there. He needs to do something with that paladin though. Unfortunately, a bad Wailing Doom does not hit anything. But this avatar, one of the worries though I have about this avatar is that in some ways he is somewhat countered. With Grey Knight Terminators doing a massive power melee damage, that Bro Captain also doing power melee damage. Basically, they just have a lot of power to do a lot of damage to that avatar. So far, the avatar has not been taking a lot of damage, and I'm not sure why. The only answer can be that he has not really been targeted. Even the Paladins will do very good damage against that avatar, just a high base DPS, and they will be doing full damage since they do heavy melee.
Space Marines have targeted one of our structures.
Now, Power Fist ignores butt armor, has lost his Farseer, he has lost Dark Reapers, he also has lost Dire Avengers. So he won't be in a position to support a vehicle play if he does decide to get a vehicle. He also... I don't know, I lost my train of thought. It is late. It's actually not the evening anymore, as much as I always say good evening. It's the morning. Late morning, like 1 a.m. and such. But it's now a 2-cap for Power Fist, ignores butt armor. Whitehead still with no power farm. I don't know why. And he chooses instead to node this contested power farm. I don't know why he's allergic to noding his natural power node. He's floating Requisition, has no power. And I mean, it's late in the game. He does have a VP lead, but he should put down a power node. He should capture the power node and then node it. And he does have 2 very powerful super units, but he's going to have a lot of trouble reinforcing them if he loses models, if he doesn't have power. I mean, as we can see, Paladins, 33 power to reinforce those Paladins. Fusion Gun Autarch is a little surprising. The Fusion Gun is a little overwhelming. It's basically a melt gun, but it's only one melt gun. 28 DPS melta. Not really all that great. Melee Autarch is better. I'm not even sure why he got that. Maybe... I mean, it does do bonus damage against super heavy infantry, but so would the Executioner. And that would actually do better. Now, yes, now that's a really good time for the gravity blade. So again, he's taking out, and he's combining it, and he does combine. Well, that actually didn't even seem to work. That was still a good use of the gravity blade. Just using it to take those Terminators out of play. And this is buying Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor a lot of time. Unfortunately, it looks like Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor is going to lose that Avatar. Now that Avatar is actually pretty well countered by both a squad of Terminators and a squad of Paladins. I mean, the Avatar can use the Wrath of Cain ability to disrupt them, but once that's on cooldown, there's not a whole lot that the Avatar can do against all of this. And we've actually been seeing these Paladins do a lot of range damage to the Avatar. So even once it's out of range, and this Psy Cannon, maybe it's good. And the Grey Knight Terminators and the Paladins have Psy Cannons, so they're actually doing full damage to the Avatar even with their ranged weapons. So this is actually not looking. Yeah, this is not looking good for Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor. Not with Paladins chasing after his Wraith Guard, as well as Grey Knight Terminators chasing after his Wraith Guard, doing bonus damage, threatening to wipe those units, and if nothing else, keeping Power Fist Ignores Butt Armor pinned in his base so that Whitehead can just start capping the victory points. He's getting a 2-cap, might even start to get a 3-cap. And with so few victory points remaining, that probably is going to look like the game for Whitehead. I mean, I'm calling it a little early. I don't know yet. So again, this is how you should use the Gravity Blade. These Terminators all clumping up, but part of the problem with those units levitating in the air, they don't seem to take any or just not much damage from the Wraith Guard. So it stuns them. That Gravity Blade, mainly for taking a unit out of the fight for a few seconds. So, looks like Whitehead now about to get a 3-cap. And yeah, that is going to be the game in favor of Whitehead. And we can still hear the sounds of Psy Cannons even after the game has ended. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the cast. Have a good night.